Hello, everyone. Thank you for sliding into our DMs. My name is Dan,
Hi, I'm Montana.
and welcome to episode 11, which is talking about disability pride. For those of you who do not know, Disability Pride Month is in this month of July, and it has a lot of different feelings coming through for us, both good and bad. And we wanted to be able to discuss all of them today and talk about how some misconceptions can happen, as well as what exactly are we prideful for. So I will kick this off to you, Montana, and exactly like what makes you prideful, or what are you both happy about, as well as what do you think is important to be touched on during Disability Pride Month?
Yeah, great question. Um, to full transparency, I did not know that much about Disability Pride Month until actually more this year. I never really heard the term. Um, and learning more about it, it was started in July of 1990 due to the ADA. And I'm prideful of how far we've come since 1990, because before then we didn't have the ADA, but now for over 20 years we have something that is to protect us. So I'm happy about that and prideful to say, okay, this is how far we've come. But I guess some challenges are for each and every one of us. We have a new set of difficulties. There's always something that can be better for the future, but a lot of people don't want to have those hard conversations about it, or they turn the blind eye because they don't want to draw too much attention, or that's what I've been seeing. So I think that's where I'm at with it. But what about you, Dan?
Yeah, and I think that's something where we have made so much progress since 1990. So many disability advocates over the course of the last decades have made so many sacrifices and have fought so hard to get to where we are now. And it's tremendous to see that. And that's something to
Yeah.
really look back on and reflect that we as a community that is so diverse and so spread out, it doesn't matter your disability, it doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your social class, anything. It's just you are someone who's disabled and a part of the community. And there's been so much change because of that intersectionality. However, there's always still a lot of work to be done. And I think some of the biggest challenges is that people think that we should just be okay with what we have, and that's simply not the case. I always like the Judy Human quote where it's like if I have to thank people for an accessible bathroom, then I know I'm not equal. And that's the case where it should just be normalized that everything should be accessible, that everything should be able for everyone to be able to use. And I think that's the other thing too, where it's that misconception of people see disability pride and think that's that idea of we're happy or excited to be disabled for whatever reason that they can come up with that's ridiculous. And that's not the case. I can be thankful that the opportunities and experiences that disability has got me, the friends that I've made, how it's helped shape who I am, and I'm proud of who I am. But I'm in pain every day. I know every other person with a disability is in pain every day. And it's something that it's not that we are happy to be disabled, it's that idea of that we just don't want to be seen as less than human.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I know for me, I have felt those feelings of with what this month means of being like, oh, you have to be happy with what you have. Because I know so many people that I talk to in the able community, they've always tried to be kind, but what they usually say is, oh, you look great. Oh, like you don't seem sick. Or they will be like, oh, well, I know like what you're going through. And I know they mean well, and I should put like a happy face on and be like, yes, like I am so happy that I'm here and I started from a few years ago. But also at the same time, I think we need to have this month so we have more inclusion and people are more aware of what to do moving forward. So the next 20 or 30 years, we're in a better spot, and possibly our kids, if we decide to have them, will be in a better spot if they too are disabled and we are moving forward. Because Like I've learned a lot. The ADA is great. However, that's usually the bare minimum. And we can move forward. And I think that's kind of what the month has inspired me a bit, but also it has made me reflect on it's okay to not be okay with your disability all the time. It's okay to recognize this is hard, but hey, I can be happy with how far I've come. And I'm hopeful that we can get more treatment options, that we can come up with a solution, not only for me, but for my community.
Exactly. And that's something that I think really embodies what disability pride is about. And it's something that I think this year especially is hit very hard because there's a lot of uncertainty going into the next couple of years. We don't know how things like the election are going to go. We don't know how things in terms of our rights and representation in certain bills that do protect us, if they will exist or how they'll exist. And we still face a lot of plight, not only just on the larger scale, but on the smaller scale. Our bodies and our health are always dynamic and always changing, and we don't always have the best doctors and support systems around us. And it's hard to feel like we have support or someone having our back in ever changing world in both the small and large scale.
Yeah, man, that just like really like hit home for me of just how there's so much uncertainty. I know I was talking to someone a few days ago about with everything that I've gone through as a disabled person, as well as what to look like in the future. I've been on edge of, okay, what can I do moving forward to be like my best self, but also be realistic that we may have to always adjust and change. We can never get comfortable with what's happening because we may have good days or we may have bad days. So what you said just really like struck home about that word. I was talking to a friend about just always being on edge and trying to figure out the next plan.
Yeah. And that's the thing where we shouldn't have to think in that survival mode. And I think that's something that we're
Yeah.
always stuck in survival mode, fight or flight, whatever you want to call it.
Fight.
It's just that that yeah, fight all the time. And it's that
Yeah.
idea of just like when do we get to just live? And I think that's another
Yeah.
part of disability pride is that idea of like we are been fighting for so long and it's exhausting. And
Yeah.
we're only in our 20s and we're 50, 60, 70 years left to go. And the fighting is hard. It's hard. And
Yeah.
it's like when can we just relax?
Yeah. Or when can we have a system that works better for us too? I know this week I've talked to quite a few friends and one fully got disability. And it was like 20 years in the making. And just what she was telling me about what she's gone through. And she was also a veteran as well. And it took so long to finally be approved. I'm over here in awe, being like, oh my gosh, we have made some improvements, but at the same time, really, it took this long in the system, so many denials, and no one tells you how the system works or how can you be best supported. And another thing, flip side, I know we've talked about this before, Dan, but insurance. Insurance is always tied to a full-time job, 40 hours. That's great if you're having a really great 5 days. However, if you're chronically ill, that may not always be the case. So, could there be more systems in place for us to move forward and it's not jumping through so many hoops, having so many red tapes, and just knowing who to go to finally make it happen? Like, why is it a secret to have a easier and healthier life?
Yeah. And yeah, I know the two of us, we have discussed a lot of times about work, and
Hmm.
it feels, yeah, like you said, like it feels like we have a second job all the time, and it's in a fight and a job that no one understands, and just to get insurance that we need that properly covers us just to get payments to stay alive for bills and rent, to be able to
Mhm.
get all that. And we talked about this in a previous episode. It's just that cycle where we're just working only to afford the things that we can to get make us okay, and
Yeah.
it inevitably just keeps us stuck in this cycle and this infinite loop over and over of us just not being able to grow or get above where we're at. And then
Yeah.
God forbid there's layoffs or firing or something, and it's just it makes the situation so scary.
Yeah. It makes the situation bad from worse. So it definitely makes us think that we always have to be in that fight mode of planning for what possibly could go wrong next. Um, because for surviving, that's one way we can do it. Um, I know there are systems out there that is to help and be in place. So I am like thankful that we at least have that. However, I feel like the system that we've had in place, like just blood work and insurance and really anything, it takes so much longer than you would anticipate it would, you know? And I just wish they realized that, hey, why don't we try and help the situation a lot more? Because I feel like when I call insurance companies or if I call someone, I have to be more assertive and use a lot more energy to get through with them of like, oh, this is serious. I need to go to this appointment or do this. I'm like, why do I have to be a Karen for things to get done? Like, why is no one believing me? Like, why is the system? I feel like no one believes me until they actually see like my medical paperwork. I'm like, why do I have to put all this time and energy when I should just be focusing on like recovering and trying to have a better quality of life? Why do I always have to be in the fight mode?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where it's just these systems are in place and it's kind of just that illusion of these are here to help you, but it's so
Yeah,
unintuitive. It's so just back and forth, so time consuming that it makes it impossible and it makes it such a hard task for anyone with a disability to accomplish. And it's done that way on purpose. So that way no one can take advantage of it. And it's that way for regularly disabled people, for elderly, for our age, for veterans, for anything. And it's just so upsetting that these systems that are in place are only there with the illusion that only the people that either know how to navigate the system or have the time or the ability to do so. And it's just so it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be a puzzle or a maze. It should just be being able to like go in and
mhm,
ask what you need and it should be there. And it's not, like you had mentioned our age, like it's so hard because our burden of proof is so much higher because we are young and people don't think young people get disabled and because our
yep,
disabilities are mostly invisible. And it's just so frustrating.
yeah, definitely is, especially when you're trying to recoup and recover from what you previously just went to. If that was like a surgery, an illness, infection, a new treatment option, it's like, okay, I'm finally getting comfortable, but wait, I have to juggle all these other things and balance all of this while acting like I'm okay the whole time. Just smiling and being like, yeah, everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe you have a chronic illness. I can't believe, like, you look fine. I don't know how many times this week I've heard you look fantastic when I am still in pain and can barely walk 10 to 15 minutes due to still recovering from multiple illnesses. And I'm like, thanks, I think, but no.
Uh, yeah. And that's the thing where people think that like that's a compliment to be like, oh, you look great. You look awesome. You look amazing. It's like, no, like, can you please like acknowledge the truth or just ask me how I feel and let me tell you. And
Yeah,
it's just it's hard to feel like people see you almost as human, like they want to treat you like a child or they want to treat you like a some animal or something like that. And it's just so upsetting that people just can't treat you like you're a person with complex emotions.
yeah. They like sometimes like look down on it, like when you start saying it, be like, oh my God, like looking at with pity, like, poor you. Like, oh my God, like, how could you live? Like, one example I can give is I went out with friends, I don't know, 2 months ago, I don't know, a few months back. And I hadn't seen them in a while. And this was right before one of my last illnesses. I can't remember with getting sick all the time. Um, but we went outside to eat. And I did gluten free and no alcohol and also no sugar. And they looked at me when I said, "Oh, I would like the gluten free like pasta or whatever." And they're like, "Oh, would you like to drink?" I'm like, "No, I'm good. Like, thank you though." And they were just like asking questions. And when it came to dessert, everyone was like, "Oh, who wants this?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm good. Like, I'm fine without dessert." And everyone looked at me like I was crazy, insane. And they're like, "What's going on?" Like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You don't eat gluten anymore?" I'm like, "No, haven't done it for a few years." They're like, "You don't drink alcohol?" I'm like, "No, it doesn't react well to my medicine. It makes me sick. So like, what's the point of doing that if I feel crappy?" They're like, "So you don't eat sugar?" I'm like, "Well, I do, but I usually try sugar free." And they looked at me like, "Wow, this must be the worst life." And they were like, "Why?" I just told them, "Oh, it's like a personal choice to see if this would help with inflammation and help with my chronic illnesses." And they're like, "Oh my God, that sounds so hard. Like, how do you do it?" And that's when I realized, like, wow, I haven't seen these people on like a bit. Um, but it made me realize, like, oh, wow, I guess I still haven't told a lot of people about like my chronic illnesses per se, that it's invisible, only like my close knit people, but also, man, not everyone understands. People still look at you like that, you know? So I think it's amazing that I can say I have a support system, that they don't look at me like I have three heads. But I kind of forgot that other people possibly may see us that way and always think the worst or like, "Oh my God, good for you." Like you were saying, like kid talk. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't have a choice. Like,
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's funny you mentioned that whole concept where it's like you think people would be accepting of like, oh, like I don't want to drink for this reason. And it even if
yeah.
disabled or not. And that's the same with like gluten or sugar. And it just feels like those people and a lot of and it's something that happens a lot is like if you aren't like fitting in with what everyone else is doing, you're just isolated, you're put in this box. And I think that's something that just disability in general puts us in, is that box. And whether that and it's just unfortunate because then you're getting put in multiple boxes. Not only is it just a disabled one, you're in like the oh, you're the sober friend. Oh, you're the complicated
Oh
friend to go
God.
to dinner with. And it's just like, no, like these are the things that I have with my body, or these are the life choices that I'm making, and I want you to respect them. But it's frustrating that people can be very disrespectful.
Yeah. That's a better term. I was gonna say people look at you with three heads, but yeah, disrespectful is a good one too. Um, yeah, I just like guess I found it so shocking because for me, I don't know, I feel like I accept people and I'm open to new things. And I guess I've just been so immersed in that world with being a coach that that's just where I've been the past like year or so and had a lot of like self-development and growth. But then when you go back into the world and you kind of have your blinders on and be like, oh, everything's like good and like I'm comfortable, then something happens and you're like, huh, okay, we have not progressed as far as I thought we did. Yeah, my immediate circle and a few other people I've talked to, yeah, we're like growing together and moving forward while other people are just stuck. And that's when you realize, like, oh, okay, yep, I'm back in society. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the hard part where it's like society, it's not us that feel stuck. Well, we do feel stuck because it feels like society is stuck.
Yeah,
And that's the thing where it's like for us, we shouldn't have to feel stuck because other people are unwilling to learn.
yeah, because it can happen to everyone. That's one thing that we talked about during Disability Inclusion Day at my company a few months back is disability can affect any and everyone, and there's over 1 billion people who have it. So why not try to learn more about it to help everyone. You can possibly help yourself in the process, especially if you are just able and like learning more. But overall, having a more inclusive world will result to a lot more happier individuals and stronger who are ready to be one and like equal. But I feel like the human mind and psychology is too complicated for that to make sense at this right moment.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Um, because it's so funny where it's like we think as humans like we're very accepting or we're very like adaptable and comforting to other people, but at the same time we could be
Mhm.
the coolest people to people that don't fit in. And it's just something where it's like, oh, you're not like us, but and it's so frustrating because if we look back long time ago, and it's
Mhm.
always that idea of like when did humans actually start having civilization? And when did they start having things that were just beyond survival? And it was the idea of like a repaired femur. And it was like you didn't leave the broken people, the sick people behind, and people were able to be healed. And it's just like that was like the concept of our when society first became society. And now it's like we're almost regressing.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. Well, I guess not funny, but like my partner, he says that a lot. I think that's why he is so comfortable being in his close knit community and like the country life because most of the time, every time he goes out, there's always like a rude comment or like something like happens. And yeah, I think that's a good word that we're not progressing forward. We're actually like moving backwards.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's scary because it feels like we should be much further along and that we
yeah.
have as a capacity to do so many tremendous things. And we've seen the amount of tremendous things that can be done. But now it's just getting rolled back. And it's by people that don't know our experiences or don't care to know our experiences.
Yeah, they're very closed-minded with how they see like one thing and they're not open to exploring others. That's a thing that I never really understood. I guess I was just raised differently, but my mom taught us like we will all have different opinions because my mom's very headstrong. So I was gonna have different opinions than her likely, and so will like my brothers. But she always say respect them. Even if you don't fully agree with it, and maybe you don't understand it, you need to do more research, or overall, you may just not agree with it. That's fine, but at least have respect to do research and try to see if that could help us like move forward. And I feel like people are just so set on one thing that they won't reflect on does this actually make sense now with where we're at? It may have made sense, I don't know how many years ago, or it may have never made sense. But will this help not only me, but the next generation? I feel like a lot of people don't talk about generational worth. That can be the generational like worth of like how much money you have, and it'll go down to like your kids and their kids and all that. But also can be generational knowledge. So I don't get why we're so stuck on short term, not the long term.
Exactly. And I think that's something that people in our society are very individualistic in that sense. And it's that idea of like, oh, I only care about the now and how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. And I don't care about anyone else. And even though there's all these world tragedies and I see these tragedies happening around me, as long as I get my home, as long as I get my peace, that's all I ask for. And I don't care what happens to anyone else. And I think that was something that was exposed a lot in COVID. I think it was something that still seen in a lot of other types of tragedies that continue to happen over and over. And it's unfortunate that that's just that level of complacency instead of this idea of seeing these things as true tragedies and wanting to
Mhm.
make that difference. And I think that's something that you had mentioned, like that idea of like a small town and tight knit community
Yeah.
where it those behaviors are very natural in the sense of like people do come together, people rally around each other to help each other. Um, And it's unfortunate that obviously not everything can be like a small rural town where we have uh, those values carried in every capacity.
Yeah. I think it would just be so much easier and so much more peaceful and overall just more calming. Um, but I think it's also just being stuck in the now, being selfish, and I want to say also like scared of change. Because I feel like some people I've talked to and they're if they are very stuck in like right now, it's because they're scared of what happens if it won't be better than now. I feel like that's when people need to take a leap, and hopefully trust themselves that it may like get better as long as you voice your opinions and do it in a like good way. But I think a lot of people are scared and on edge of the unknown. So that's why they stay
Yeah.
here, even though it may not be that great. Because I know I've talked to some relatives about it. They're like, well, I can't complain too much. I'm like, well, can't you look for more hope?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where change is so scary for people that they are willing to be stuck in a bad situation than to rock the boat. And that's
Yeah.
natural because it's better. It's almost like the idea of like it's the devil you know instead of the devil you don't. And it's something that they're willing to not grow or willing to not learn if that just means that they have the perception of being safe.
Hmm.
And that's something that unfortunately a lot of people have, and it can be very harmful. And I think that was like earlier brought up that idea of like people have different opinions. Oh, I'm sorry, give me one. Sorry about that. Um, what's it called? What was I saying? Oh, but yeah, it's that idea of like there's all of these differentiating opinions, and I think it's one of those things where it's important to recognize and understand people's opinions, but
Hmm.
it's not always you have to validate them. And it's that idea of like when there are opinions that are derogatory or demeaning or dehumanizing, um,
Hmm.
I think it's important to contest and challenge those views and try and see if you can change people. It's not always successful, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's important to try and see if there can be that difference.
Yeah. And that definitely takes a lot of courage with being wanting to start that change. And like you were saying, because I feel like whenever people think of like change and like starting that change and like moving forward,
Yeah. And I think it's like when it comes to disability pride is like how do we get more people to change
too,
their
is some
opinions?
people, oh, what were we saying?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I don't know. I think it just cut out.
Yeah, you
I just
cut
heard
out a
like
little bit.
okay, that was weird. I think I was just basically like long story short about people with change that sometimes with them being scared, they come at with it kind of heated because I know some people in my life they do that. But if you can have that open communication and also those boundaries of saying, okay, maybe at this point I need to step away from this hard conversation to reboost my energy. But I want table this and talk about this later because I know sometimes we need to take a step away because it's amazing that we're having these open conversations that hopefully changeful conversations, but also it can be a lot for us to handle all in one setting. So if you do have the chance or has this happen, make sure you're listening to yourself as well and coming back to it when you're fresh. So there's not a yelling match.
Yeah. And that's something where sometimes you're never going to change people's opinions and it's tough. And sometimes it's okay to cut people out of your life. And I've definitely had to have done that for both friends and family. And I think it's one of those things though where it's like, how can we change a larger scale of opinions? And tying that to
Mm-hmm.
disability pride is like, how can we get more people to see us as the humans that we are? And the best answer is that I don't know. I feel like it's that idea of like, I just know that we need to get mad in the sense of
Hmm.
like, I don't know what the sense of like where or what to protest or what to say or do, but it's one of those things where it's like if you are mad and you see these things that you hate, you have to make that difference. And it's something that just has to be done. But you can't do that unless you are mad.
Yeah, unless you have that fire and spark for that purpose of driving forward and making the community and like your life as a whole better. But sometimes you don't see that right away. It takes a while to finally see all those changes that happened.
Exactly. Exactly, exactly. And I think that's just it's going to be interesting looking 30, 40 years from now what disability pride is going to be like, what rights are potentially gained versus what rights may have been taken away, and how
Yeah.
we move forward because we're still here. And as long as we're still here, we have to fight. And there could always be a betterment of society.
Yes, I could have not said it better. And hopefully within the next 30 to 40 years, you and I will still be advocating and seeing what positive changes happen. And if things aren't as positive as we hope, hopefully we can make a difference with the whole community.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think that's truly a beautiful way to end this episode. So with that, thank you all for watching. Seriously, it means the world to Montana and I that we are able to make these episodes. We would love to hear your feedback, comments, any potential suggestions for episode ideas. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow our Instagram or Patreon, anything like that. Um, and yeah, we hope that you all have a wonderful day. Is there anything else that you want to add, Montana?
I was just going to say thank you guys so much for listening. And I look forward to hearing what you guys say in the comments. And I hope you have a beautiful night, day, morning, wherever you're listening to it.
All right. And with that, thank you for sliding into our DMs and see you later. Bye.
Bye.